Like, I do feel at the moment that these projects could grow a lot faster if I was focusing on them full time.
The value of having a full-time income is that sustains you while you can slowly and in a fun way build your side projects up.
Yeah, there's no stress about the projects making money. If they do, then they do. But I think it's a bit of a curse that there is that cushion because there is no pressure. So I might not be taking the risks and I might not be pushing as hard as I could be to make them into a success.
Hello and welcome back to Indie Bites, the podcast where I bring you stories of fellow indie hackers in 15 minutes or less. Today we're joined by Dan Rowden, who is an entrepreneur and product builder currently based in Mauritius. Dan, like many other indie hackers, runs a bunch of projects alongside a full-time job, which all compounds him making over 5k a month with all of his projects. In 2012, he started Magpile, a free online resource about magazines, which was followed by Subsale, a platform to help indie publishers sell magazine subscriptions. Earlier this year, Dan started using the publishing platform Ghost, which he then started to build a suite of products around. Now that includes Gloat, a productized service for hosting and self-hosting, Cove, a commenting tool for Ghost blogs, and Substation, a theme for Ghost. It doesn't stop there, because a few months ago, Dan launched Illo, a better analytics platform for Twitter, which has earned over 6k in revenue since launch. If you're like Dan and you work on your side projects on evenings and weekends, then I think you're going to like our podcast sponsor, Weekend Club. Weekend Club is a friendly community of indie hackers that meet up every Saturday for deep working sessions, making sure we stay accountable with our goals. The community includes founders of bootstrap companies like Veed and SimplePole, as well as smaller indie hackers like you and me. Weekend Club has just launched in the US, so if you're interested in signing up, use IndieBytes your code for 50% off your first month. Let's get into the show. Dan, welcome to the podcast. How are you, mate?
Very well. Yeah, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good. You just moved into a nice new place in Mauritius.
We've lived in a few different places. Yeah, we just looked for a nice warm place and ended up here. There's no ties, there's no job. It's just working online from a tropical island.
Yeah, I'm very jealous. I live by the beach, but in Whitstable in the UK. And currently it's not very nice looking out at the beach, seeing the murky grey water and weeds growing on the beach. Anyway, let's go on to indie hacking side projects, what you're working on. You've got a portfolio of projects, and a few people I've spoken to have this. Rob Hope in one of the previous episodes, he has 4 or 5 things all going on at the same time. One of them might earn quite a lot more than the other, but they all sort of compound to give him his full-time income. Why would you choose the route of doing multiple smaller things versus just doing one side project?
I think the main reason is that I can't just do one thing at one time. I did run Subsale for a few years as my only product, but it wasn't like a conscious choice. And then this year I started having loads of new ideas and I got back on Twitter, like more kind of full time. It's not necessarily about taking lots of small bets. It's just me having an idea and realizing that I can build the thing and launch it.
And how are you managing all of your time between everything?
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes. I don't have a lot of time for these projects because I do have a full-time job. I do these all in my spare time, and I have 3 kids as well, and obviously a wife. So yeah, my days are already full, but I squeeze in an hour or 2 here and there when I can, and kind of just make gradual, small progress on them over time, and yeah, it builds up eventually. I don't have any expectations about these growing into like massive businesses. So yeah, I'm just happy kind of chipping away and doing things as I can.
If one of them took off, so say Illo suddenly starts getting a ton of people in and you're making tens of thousands of dollars every month from it, would you start to drop your other things and focus on Illo? Did you think that could be boring just working on one thing?
I think if I did build something that did take off like that, then I guess I would have to commit to it. I would assume that I would have to drop something at some point to make that happen. Like, I do feel at the moment that these projects could grow a lot faster if I was focusing on them full time.
You've only got so much time, but you do have a full-time job which is sustaining you, which means you don't have the worry of having to grow your side projects to a specific point. I know a lot of people that are working on their side projects, they might have multiple ones, but they're burning through savings and they've got to make their projects work. But I think the value of having a full-time income is that sustains you while you can slowly and in a fun way build your side projects up.
Right. Yeah, there's no stress about the projects making money. If they do, then they do. But I think it's a bit of a curse that there is that cushion because there is no pressure. So I might not be taking the risks and I might not be pushing as hard as I could be to make them into a success. You know what I mean? It's like a a double-edged sword, as they say.
I completely agree. And I feel like I'm in the same boat with everything that I start. Indie Bites, the other podcast I had, the podcast editing service, all of which I'm sure could do much better than they are if I had the pressure that I needed to make money for them. But I think that'd also remove a lot of the fun from it. The reason I do these side projects is because they're fun. It's because they're enjoyable. I get to talk to people like you on this podcast, and I don't have to worry about how much money it earns.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's all my projects are kind of hobbies, I guess. It's like the best term to use for them. Little things I dabble in throughout the week. And yeah, if at the moment they're making a bit of money every month, then that's just like a bonus.
And you've got a suite of Ghost products. Ghost is a publishing platform. You've got Gloat Dev. You've then got Gloat Hosting, which you recently launched, Cove and Substation, the Ghost theme. Why is it you're so bullish on Ghost?
I think that Ghost is maybe the best online publishing platform. Online publishing is something that's hung around on the internet since the early days. People want to write and they want to put their ideas out, or they want to publish new content. And I think Ghost is positioning itself now as a brilliant modern tool for that. They started off as like a blogging platform, but now they're integrating newsletters, which is adapting to today's publishing kind of norms, the open source nature, and the features that they tend to release, just putting them in a great position for the future.
Is there a benefit to having these projects being so complementary towards each other? Are you constantly sort of thinking about new things you can develop for Ghost, or is it just it quite organically happens?
Yeah, it's been quite organic. So I started a blog in the beginning of this year about t-shirts because I wanted to get into like making a t-shirt brand, and I just wanted to practice learning about the industry. So I started writing about t-shirts using Ghost. And then in the spring, I decided to make a Ghost native commenting tool, which is what Cove is. And then, yeah, since then, because I'd set up a few Ghost sites, I decided to start selling that as a service because it can be quite difficult if you've never done it before. So that was what Gloat, the services business, came from. Yeah, and then as a developer designer, themes was a natural progression. And it's been, you talk about the complementary kind of nature of them. It's been quite cool seeing people buy Substation theme and then sign up to Cove to use the comments, and then realize that I have a host. So then they sign up for the host, or the other way around, that they find out about Gloat and then they buy the theme and then they install Cove after that. So yeah, in that way, it works quite well that they're interlinked, because I have had customers buy the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole suite. And interestingly about this suite, and you put out a really insightful tweet thread on it, is you actually got an offer to purchase the suite of Ghost products. How did that come about? And what were the sort of the options that were presented to you?
So I don't know what the trigger was for this person to reach out, but I think it was the day before I'd actually tweeted about how I've changed my mindset that everything has its price, and if someone were to try and buy something, then I would be open to offers. That's probably the next day someone DM'd me and it's like, I'd like to talk about buying your Ghost suite. We had a chat and they pitched me 3 different offers, and ultimately it didn't happen. It was a cool experience. As I said in the tweet thread, it's a nice validation, I guess, to know that people value my work and the products that I've been putting out.
You presented with 3 different offers, really. You had the 75k for a clean exit, just sell them and wipe your hands, take the money and run. Be bored because you have 4 less projects on your hands. But then you had 67k to retain 20% of it, but no commitment to working them further, or a 50k cash injection with 50% ownership and a commitment to continue working on them. How were you feeling at that point? How did you decide which one you were going to, like, if you were have gone for it, which one would you have gone for?
So the clean exit was the most maybe obvious choice. I'm not used to like working on these projects with other people. I guess that's one reason. But I think the other thing was just be like, if someone were to like buy them, then I think being part of that kind of setup would have just been a bit messy, at least for the first like while. So yeah, I was happy to let them go and move on to new things.
What caused the change in mindset, and how hard do you think it would have been to walk away from stuff you put blood, sweat and tears into in your projects?
I think initially it would have been okay because I would have been busy like tidying them up and getting them ready for like handover. But then I guess like after the fact, I still haven't really thought about what that next step would have been like. Someone else running the things that I built from nothing, you know what I mean? I don't know what that feeling's like. So yeah, I'm not sure how it would have gone. But I think it's, yeah, just that mindset of, here, take my thing. I'm not that attached to it. I think it's an important thing to do, even if you're not selling your projects, because you don't get all like connected to them or tied up in their success. If things go bad, then it shouldn't affect you. And if things go well, then it shouldn't affect you. It's just detach yourself from the projects a bit more. It's like a healthier way of running things. And I'm happy that kind of triggered that change.
Yeah, it's really cool. But what happened with the deal? Why did it end up not going through?
So it was the week that Squarespace announced their membership features. I think that maybe the buyer they weren't like 100% convinced that maybe putting that much capital into something in a platform that they weren't sure was going to be the winner in the future. Maybe they decided that wasn't such a good idea. I don't know. I'm not sure why they pitched those figures and then ultimately didn't go through with it. But
yeah, it's certainly a cool experience. And I'm excited by Ghost because I switched to it earlier this year and think it's an exceptional product. It's really nicely executed. And as you mentioned, it's open source as well. Where do you think it's going in the future with their investment in memberships and being the alternative to Substack and similar things to that?
I think they seem very attached to the idea of publishing, whereas like other tools become CMSs or kind of website builders. They're sticking true to like you write a post and you publish it as the core features. They've added newsletters. So I think at least for now, the future is going to be more newsletter, email focused. Yeah, then I don't know what like the next step would be other than just making sure that they are one of the best publishing platforms.
Let's switch up a little bit and talk about Illo, which is the product you were working mostly on when I first sort of reached out to you and we started talking about Indie Bytes. What made you build an alternative analytics platform for Twitter, and how's that gone so far for you?
Yeah, so I was an early Twitter user in 2006. I love the platform. It's probably my favorite web tool ever, and I've been on it kind of on and off since 2006 until earlier this year when I thought I'd give it a go. And then I just got obsessed with the indie builder group that I kind of stumbled into. And I started sharing my progress on projects and as I was building Cove and Gloat and stuff like that. And the Twitter analytics that I built into Twitter are okay. And I realized that there's a way to make better analytics for Twitter. The focus that I wanted to bring to Illo was the engagement. So it's not about like how many tweets you do or how many impressions your tweets get. It's more about how your tweets are kind of received and how people react to them. And I think that's a better way to understand how well you're doing on Twitter. Also, like the follower number is one of those like vanity metrics. But again, if you see huge growth in your followers, then you're obviously doing something. So that's something else that Illo makes it easy to see and track. I think that like the main difference between the two products is that Illo is more detailed. So you have more charts and you can drill into the data a lot more.
And you mentioned you started getting more bullish with Twitter earlier in the year. You decided to give it another go. Why did you decide to do it then? And what sort of things were you doing differently?
I think it was because of that blog that I started writing. And obviously when you start writing a blog, you need to go on social media more. I'd been on Instagram quite heavily the last 3 years maybe. And I just started tweeting about what I was working on. It's just like regularly tweeting, putting out ideas or putting out figures or progress in projects. If it doesn't drive followers, then it doesn't drive followers. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't really matter. What does a follower number really matter at the end of the day? But I think a lot of people are trying to search for the perfect format. They're trying threads. They're trying to provide value. But I think what you're saying is about just be yourself. Don't be commenting on your Virgin Media speed and how terrible they are, because that's not going to help you grow followers. But what we'll do is sharing your progress, be open, honest, authentic, all these sorts of things. Dan, it's been bloody good fun chatting to you about your side projects. It's awesome to see what you're doing. We end the episode on a few recommendations. Now, I usually ask people for a book, a podcast, and an indie hacker, but I've since learned you don't read books. But what you do read is magazines and newsletters. So what I'm going to ask you for is a magazine, a newsletter, a podcast, and then an indie hacker. Fire out your recommendations.
Okay, here goes. Magazine, Courier magazine, which is like a business startup DTC kind of magazine from London. Newsletter, Dense Discovery by my mate Kai, who runs Offscreen magazine. Podcast, it's a tough one. I would probably have to just go with Startup because I got so much out of Startup and I think it's like a brilliant kind of audio journey. And Indie Hacker, Impossible to choose just one person, but I'm going to go with Justin Jackson because, again, I've learned a lot from him over the years.
Brilliant recommendations. Dan, I'll make sure I put links to everything discussed in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks a lot for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the pod. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you've made it this far into the episode and you'd like to support the podcast, I'm now offering a membership with ad-free episodes and extended conversations. Head to indiebytes.co/membership to find out more. As always, links to what we discussed are in the show notes. See you in the next one.